Imagine a man who seemed to have everything to go wrong, abandoned, aimless, wandering the streets, searching for meaning in empty spaces and thoughtless choices. Someone who knew loneliness, shame, and the pain of losing everything. Now, imagine this same man becoming one of history's greatest symbols of compassion, capable of transforming suffering into hope and despair into healing. This is the incredible journey of St. John of God, the saint who was born from chaos to illuminate thousands of lives. The story you're about to discover is not just about a religious man from the past, but about an ordinary human being who fell, rose, and left an eternal mark. It's a journey that shows that the greatest struggles hide the greatest purposes, and that no one is lost when there is faith. Get ready, because John's life will not only move you, but will also provoke a profound reflection on the power of transformation. And in today's video, we'll retrace the steps of St. John of God together. From his aimless youth to his encounter with God, from his most painful wounds to the birth of work that has spanned the centuries. If you think your life has no way out, this story will prove that there is still a path, and that this path can be much greater than you imagine. From an early age, João Cidade experienced firsthand what it means to walk alone in the world. Losing his parents as a child is like having the ground ripped out from under him, and that emptiness accompanied him with every step. Imagine, for a moment, a boy with a lost gaze trying to make sense of a world that seemed cold and indifferent. It's like that feeling of being in a room full of people, but feeling invisible. This pain, which could have destroyed many, in João transformed into a silent flame, preparing his heart for something yet to come. But don't think this weight disappeared easily, because it didn't. Loneliness hits hard when there's no one to lean on or a voice to call home. Many, in his position, could close themselves off forever, building walls around their own souls. But João, even without realizing it, was developing a rare sensitivity, a watchful eye for those who also suffered. It's like that person who, having been hungry, always shares bread, having cried in the dark, always lights a candle for others. Deep down, life was training João for something much greater, and this mark of orphanhood didn't distance him from people. On the contrary, it brought him closer to forgotten and marginalized. After all, those who experience the pain of rejection eventually recognize from afar those who also carry wounds. João began to see on the streets what many ignored: tired faces, downcast looks, lives crushed by indifference. This learning, born in childhood, shaped a heart that would one day be a safe haven for the desperate. But destiny would still lead him down wandering paths, starry nights, and deep silences that, in mysterious ways, were shaping his true mission. After a childhood marked by loneliness, João Cidade began a life on the road, as if searching in each path for an answer to the emptiness he carried in his heart. He worked as a shepherd, walked between villages, slept under starry skies, and experienced the uncertainty of having no roots. And no matter how many times he moved, the weight of the question remained: what is my purpose? Many know that feeling of always being on the move, but never finding true rest. It was as if he thirsted for something the world couldn't offer. This wandering life seemed too harsh, but it hid an invisible training. With each humble task, João learned to cope with the harshness of the earth and the simplicity of bread. With each lonely night, he strengthened his ability to endure silence. And in each stranger he encountered, there were lessons that shaped his humanity. He didn't realize it, but God was already writing a silent story in his life. As with many of us, the greatest transformations come not in comfort, but in the deserts of existence. It was during this time of searching that João learned something essential. Life can push us away from immediate answers, but this path is necessary to shape the soul. He began to notice signs that seemed small, but carried profound messages. A word of comfort from a stranger, the unexpected sharing of bread, the beauty of a clear night after a storm. All of this formed a mosaic of experiences that, together, were preparing the man who would become not only a survivor of pain, but a guide for those who suffer. Amid his tireless search for a place in the world, João Cidade found the army a chance for stability, albeit temporary. Wearing the uniform seemed, at first glance, to give him a sense of belonging, as if he had finally found a space where he could assert himself. But the reality of war proved far harsher than he imagined. Amidst battle cries and the weight of rigid discipline, Joao began to live with the scars of violence, those that affect not only the body, but also the soul. The wounds of war were not only on the battlefield, but within him, growing silently. The young man realized that behind apparent strength, there was a hidden fragility. Military experience showed him the dark side of humanity, where lives were lost for ambition and pride, and where a man's worth was measured by his usefulness in the fight. Joao, who already possessed the sensitivity of one who knew pain, began to feel the weight of human suffering even more deeply. It was as if life was leading him to see that his mission could never lie in arms. And it was in this hostile environment that a decision was born. Joao could not fulfill himself through violence. The war left scars, but also opened his eyes to the true battle he would face, not against armies or visible enemies, but against the despair, loneliness, and lack of love that corroded so many hearts. The wandering soldier, wounded inside and out, began to understand that his mission lay beyond the sword, on a much deeper battlefield, that of compassion. After leaving the army, Joao Cidade tried to rebuild his life, but circumstances led him to one of the darkest moments in his life. He was unjustly accused and thrown into prison, a place of cold, hunger, and abandonment. For many, that would be the end, the total collapse of any hope. But for Joao, that pit of despair became a kind of secret school. Between the damp walls and the suffocating darkness, he discovered that pain could, paradoxically, be a channel for the voice of God. In prison, Joao experienced a truth few understand. When everything is taken from us, only the essential remains. He had no possessions, no friends, no prestige, no freedom. All that remained was the silence of his soul before the Creator. And it was there, where there seemed no escape, that he began to sense a different presence, something that came not from the guards or walls, but from above. The pain that crushed him was transformed into fuel for faith, and Joao understood that he was not alone. God had entered his invisible cell to show him that every tear could be a seed of hope. This discovery marked a turning point in his life. The prison, which could have been his moral grave, became the cradle of a new mission. He emerged not only as a man who had survived injustice, but as someone who had learned to transform suffering into compassion. The fall was not his ruin, but his inner liberation. And it was this experience that shaped his heart to welcome the poor and the sick, because he knew firsthand what it meant to be forgotten and humiliated. Upon leaving prison, Joao Cidade was no longer the same. The pain that had consumed him for so long had transformed into sensitivity to the suffering of others. He began to roam the streets, makeshift hospitals, and places where the sick were forgotten, bringing not just a piece of bread or a glass of water, but something much more valuable: presence and compassion. Unlike those who looked at the sick with revulsion, Joao approached them with tenderness, touching their wounds without fear, and offering words that healed more than medicine. It was in this silent and constant movement that he discovered his true calling. Each simple gesture of care was a living sermon, proof that faith is not expressed only in temples, but in direct contact with human pain. Joao learned that service is not an act of external greatness, but of inner surrender. By washing the wounds of others, he was, in fact, washing away the scars left by life. Compassion became his medicine and, at the same time, his mission. This awakening not only transformed his life, but lit a flame that would soon spread beyond him. People began to be inspired by his way of life, joining Joao in this silent labor of love. Thus was born the embryo of what would later become a great work, a community dedicated entirely to the care of the poor and the sick, where human dignity would be restored to the power of faith and service. The impact of Joao Cidade's life soon went beyond his physical presence. His way of serving with love and dignity caught the attention of others who wished to follow his same path. Thus was born the Hospitaller Order, a community dedicated entirely to the care of the poor, the sick, and forgotten. It was not just a group of people helping out of obligation, but men and women driven by a profound passion, inspired by the example of Joao, who had transformed his own pain into a source of healing for many. That simple movement would soon become a beacon for the entire world. The legacy of St. John of God is not limited to buildings or institutions, but to the spirit he conveyed, that of service without measure, of seeing those in need not as a burden, but as a brother. His work spanned centuries, spreading across many countries and carrying with a message that remains relevant today. True power lies not in winning applause, but in offering care to those who no longer have the strength. This legacy has not faded, for it was built on something indestructible: love for one's neighbor. Today, every hospital, every social work project, and every gesture of solidarity inspired by John of God is a reminder that compassion can transform reality. His life shows that no matter how low one has fallen, there's always a greater purpose waiting to be discovered in the midst of pain. St. John of God teaches us that service is the highest form of love, and that by caring for others, we find our own healing. His name has been marked in history as the saint of the sick, but above all, as a man who proved that love can change the world. The life of St. John of God is proof that the greatest falls can become the starting point for the greatest miracles. From a lost, wandering young man marked by thoughtless choices, he transformed into a giant of compassion, capable of seeing beauty where others saw only misery. His imprisonment, which seemed like the end, was actually the beginning of a new life. There, in the silence of pain, God lit a flame that would change not only the story of one man, but of entire generations. Each step taken by John, from his unbridled search for purpose to his awakening compassion for the sick, reveals that there is no such thing as useless suffering. Everything can be transformed when there is surrender and faith. The birth of the Hospitaller Order was confirmation that his testimony would not end with his death, but would multiply in every heart willing to serve. What began as simple gestures of care became an immortal work, rooted in love. Today, as we look at his story, we are called to reflect. How often do we allow ourselves to be paralyzed by our mistakes and pain? St. John of God teaches us that when we offer our wounds to God, they can become a source of healing for the world. His legacy is not only historical, but profoundly timely, living to serve, loving without limits, and discovering in others the very face of Christ. This is a true legacy he left us, and it continues to challenge each of us